How's it going, Plunger Maniacs? Back with another time lapse here. This time it's something a little bit different because I feel the need to prove that I can draw more than non-plunger wearing monkeys and cartoon self-portraits. This here is a little dragon illustration I did for my wife for her birthday. That is now set as the wallpaper on her PC. It's a tradition that I started a couple of years ago. She has to sit in front of her computer for work all day, and I thought I would try to brighten up her day a little bit. This is clearly not your stereotypical dragon. It is, if the fish didn't give that away, it's a sea dragon. So I enjoy creature design in general, and I like thinking about evolution and the way creatures evolve for their environments and things like that. So I had a little bit of fun with trying to think about what would happen if a dragon creature thing evolved in the ocean as opposed to the stereotypical terrestrial dragons or your winged flying dragons. I am by no means a skilled professional at creature design. I know a few things about anatomy, and I've made my own observations over my lifetime about nature and things like that. But if you want to really get a good lesson on creature design and anatomy and just how evolution ties into the creatures you design, check out Science of Creature Design by Terrell Whitlatch. If you don't know who Terrell Whitlatch is, you've probably seen her work before if you've ever watched one of the Star Wars prequel movies. She was one of the lead creature designers for that. And in fact, I highly recommend one of her other books, The Wildlife of Star Wars. It's just filled with her illustrations and designs. It's kind of put together like an old school field journal of an explorer that would go out and do drawings and take notes of the various flora and fauna they would encounter. But it's set in the Star Wars universe across multiple planets. It's phenomenal. But as I started saying, the Science of Creature Design, she kind of breaks down her process, gives sort of in book format a mini class on biology and anatomy from bone structure to muscles and tendons, and talks about functionality, and it's an invaluable resource that I actually need to spend some more time looking through. And then another book of hers that I would recommend is the Cataran Odyssey. It is sort of a graphic novel, not in the comic book format with page full of panels, but it's beautiful illustrations and prose combined. It's this adventure story of this sort of Earth-like planet, but instead of humans being the dominant species, it's all the other animals. So each animal, whether it's some type of a bird or an ape or some kind of quadruped or a sea animal, they've all got their own societies and culture and things like that. And it's this adventure story of this ring-tailed lemur, whose name I can't remember. But really, it's a decent story. But you should get it for Ms. Whitlatch's illustrations, if nothing else. Talking a little bit about the process here. I tend to start out when I'm trying to do a digital painting, as opposed to just a pen and ink style illustration, whether digital or traditional. I do a rough sketch first, and then I lower the opacity on that layer, and on a new layer I do a more refined drawing, some line art. I'd really like to be free and loose enough just to go right into painting, but I don't know if I'm too detail obsessed or what the issue is. I'm just not entirely comfortable doing that, but I'm working on it. But with the line art, I like having sort of a roadmap of where the forms are, what the composition is, where the little details are going to be. I'll often go back and I'll switch off all the paint layers and go back to the line art or go back to the rough sketch if I need to rework some details or add some things I forgot, change some things. But from there, I'll usually lay in some kind of a background, at least in a piece like this that's got a sort of a very loose, vague background. And then I'll go to what is in the industry referred to usually as flatting. So that's where I just put down solid colors, local colors, which is basically the color of an object when it's not being affected by light or shadow. From there, I'll usually try to do some kind of a clipping mask or make selections just to constrain where my brush strokes go next. And I'll add a multiply layer to do the shadows, to help sculpt the form. Next is usually some kind of a layer for highlights, whether it's a screen, blend mode, or a lighten. It's usually overlay. I usually get the best effects with the way I work from an overlay layer. And then from there it gets into fine-tuning, a couple extra layers of shadow if I need to push the darks somewhat, because if you scroll back in time on this video, you'll see that I started out when I was doing the shadows, it was solid black. And then I just lowered the opacity. And I like doing that because it gives me a consistent, even shadow, as opposed to if I was just trying to airbrush shadow on, you kind of get spots that are a little darker, spots that are a little lighter, and it's harder to blend them and get a smooth shadow. But if I just do a solid color, maybe blend the edge, and then I lower the opacity so that you can see the detail and the colors popping through better, I just like that sort of effect better. I'm starting to run out of time on this video, and I really wanted to talk a little bit more about this process, but mostly where I learned it from, and that's from former Disney animator Aaron Blaise. If you don't know who he is, you've probably experienced his work. He's worked on Lion King and Mulan and Beauty and the Beast, and he was the head artist, head animator, I forget what his title was, on Brother Bear before he left to pursue his own thing. If it weren't for the tutorials that he has put out, I would be years behind in my skill, if you want to call it that, or at least my knowledge of, the workflow of how to work this way. Check out his website at creatureartteacher.com. Look him up on YouTube for all his tutorials. He's got tutorials that you can buy that are really in-depth. They go into animation, illustration, anatomy, character design. He just puts out a lot of phenomenal content. Both, he works traditionally and digitally. He's just an amazing illustrator. So check out Aaron Blaise. Coming to the end of the video here. I wanted to, at the end of this one, instead of just showing what the final product looked like, I did a couple of close-ups just because there's some interesting textures and details that I worked in there. But anyway, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, watch my ads, and buy my shirts.